Hello, hello. Hey, James. Just waiting for Sandeep to join. Get myself some water. Hello, hello. Hey, Sandeep. Where can I see you? Okay, okay. We're getting there. I'm just trying to. Oh no. It says Sandeep is unable to join. Just having some technical difficulties, but we will get there.
Hi, George.
Hey, Sandeep. I was trying to get you to join, but it
Hello.
wasn't allowing me. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you. Good to see
Good.
you. Just trying to set this up. Okay. All right.
I'm glad it's
Cool.
all working fine. Instagram.
Yeah,
Touch
yeah.
wood.
All right, cool. So we got a very exciting conversation to go through today. Obviously, we spoke together last week just to go over everything, and that was really nice. So I'm very excited to have a conversation. So just before we start, I just want to ask you how your weekend was, how you're doing, how was everything?
Wow, that's a lot, isn't it? So much has happened since we've all come back from Christmas and New Year now. Happy New Year, by the way. I don't know
Thank
when to stop saying it. I don't really know, but
you.
Happy New Year to you, George, and everybody joining us today. It's just been go, go, go. I think as soon as we've come back to work after Christmas, it's just been really, really busy. And the festive break was actually the first time I had properly signed off from work, from advocacy work, and I just gave myself
Yeah,
that few weeks to just focus on self-care. And coming back, it was hard hitting. I really missed that way of life. But to be honest, it's always there. It's just our focus diverts when you've got all these different external factors playing. So it was good to rest it up for 2 weeks, and now we're back. All business as usual, really. Work from
yeah.
home.
It's good to be on the go again as well, especially with the momentum of the New Year's.
Mm,
Yeah.
absolutely. How has your break been?
Yeah, it's been nice. Yeah, like when we spoke, it's been really good. I was lucky and fortunate enough to spend it with people I love and respect so dearly. Some of
Mm.
which are here listening as well. So hello to you guys.
Hi.
And and it was also nice to, yeah, like you said, take a break. Like it was the first time since I started my personal page as well that I've taken an
Mm.
extended break from it. But that was really nice as well, just to kind of like, relax and get my head together and get my head right, and the whole mental health side of it. So that was really cool. So yeah, it was great. It was fantastic, actually. Um,
Amazing. Great to
yeah.
hear. Great.
And right, so let's get right into it. So today we're going to be talking about mental health. I know you have a very personal experience, and obviously you have your very raw reasons as well as to why you're an advocate for mental health and you're involved in so many different organizations. So the first question I want to ask, it's not really a question, but the first thing I want to ask you to talk about is talk about your roles with Rethink Mental Illness and Time to Change campaign and Happy Head UK. If you want to start with Rethink Mental Illness.
Yes, sure. So with Rethink Mental Health, I've been part of the charity as a committee member for over 4 or 5 years now. So what that role initially entails, it's all about having a say, having a direct say and involvement in the charity. So from issues like governance, structure, organizational structure, lobbying, fundraising, and campaigning. So our role, or as my role states, is a committee member. So we have direct, like I said, direct involvement in the charity, making those relevant changes higher up, and focusing a lot around government lobbying. So to make changes around equality and diversity, around mental health. So there's lots that are actually happening around tackling mental health inequalities. So that is really on the horizon for the charity, as well as many other prevalent issues. We can go on and on about that. But I've been, yes, actively involved with Rethink for many years now.
This one's it's a bit more established than the other two are, as well.
Yes, yeah. So they deal with various, it's a charity that deals with various different issues. It was actually started up as National Schizophrenia Charity many years ago. And they've done a whole revamp and widened their mental health support and resources out there. So they not only help and support those that need support around schizophrenia, but also wider mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and many more out there. They also have, which I absolutely love about the charity, they have and they heavily support other services and groups out there across the region, over in the UK here. And it was a pleasure to be involved in that. And just to give you an idea of what we did, we had to visit and have informal visits and informal audits done on these services and groups. So that was, in fact, quite a big role that we had to play as part of being a committee member for Rethink. But no, it's been an absolute journey with Rethink, and there's so many changes, as you can imagine. In the last 18 months, so much has happened, so much restructuring, so many ways of where the charity is seeking to improve, and other opportunities out there. So watch this space.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I was just gonna go, yeah, moving on to Time to Change campaign as well.
yes, so Time to Change. I've been involved with them. That was actually my first campaign that I've been involved in, back in 2015, 2016. And it's actually not many people know this, but it's more of a social movement, or it was a social movement rather than a charity. And unfortunately, Time to Change ended its funding. I think in end of last year in March, which was really unfortunate for everybody, especially those hubs and champions which the social movement supported. But we have come so far. We've done so many work. We've got so many champions and hubs, and now we've created a legacy project and a steering group. So again, watch this space for that. But I've been actively involved with Time to Change as a champion for many years. That was actually my first opportunity to share my story. I remember before I shared my story, I wasn't at a comfortable stage in my life doing so. So I took up the opportunity of just taking photos and videos in the background for a particular Time to Change event that I supported in Croydon. So
Yeah. It's very
yeah, no,
sensitive, and I guess you'd need like a lot of courage to share your story, to be fair. Yeah.
absolutely. And one of the key areas that Time to Change does, obviously the Legacy Project now, with the sister charities Rethink and Mind supporting moving forward, is they do a lot of training, and one of the training is speak out training. So in short, what that does is support those that want to lived experience, individuals that want to share their story, but they don't know how to go about doing so. And it's around constructing and formulating your story in a concise format. You know, you've got beginning, middle, and end. But then you also got to think about the rhetoric, the language, how you convey yourself as well. So speak out training is one of many training that I've been involved in, and had the honor to as well.
Right. And the last one here is Happy Heads UK. Can you talk a little bit about that before we get into the nitty-gritty of it?
Yeah, sure, George. So Happy Heads came about after I had a chat with a fellow Time to Change champion, again many moons ago, and we thought about the fact that with our one-to-ones with counsellors and therapists and the wider mental health domain, there wasn't any recovery tool out there where it was visual first and foremost. Secondly, it was a personalized way to self-empower people that are suffering. And thirdly, to make it fun, to make it more understandable and digestible what you're going through to a stranger, for example. And if you picture it like a pie chart, and you're trying to find balance in 7 key areas of your life. So, to name a few: nutrition, exercise, art, creativity, and many more. So, it's a pie chart where you take ownership of your own mental health
Right.
and you essentially score yourself in those particular 7 areas. And it's a great way to bring along, for example, to your first counseling session. It shows that you've got that knowledge of what you're going through, and you can work together on the improvements that you want to make aligned to those 7 areas, focusing on your strengths rather than the labels attached to you.
Yeah.
It's all about that. So we've done numerous events, training, co-production work, and many more as well. So I'm the co-director along with 2 others, and it's a small team since 2017.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. That's great work. I wish you the best of luck with that going forward as well.
Thank you, George. I'll keep you posted, definitely.
Yeah. All right. So first question, actually, before I ask the questions that I have written down here, there was a question in the chat. So the first one here is, how can mental health challenges affect different ethnic groups in different ways?
That's a really good question. I'm so glad and pleased that someone mentioned that question. So thank you, first and foremost. With mental health, it gets very, very complex and challenging when you're dealing with people of color. Um, and I personally don't like the term BAME. I believe that with ethnic minority groups, there are so many more challenges that come with it with mental health. First of all, the biggest one is the stigma. It's a stigma first and foremost. It's how do you even dare to begin to tell somebody, um, in your family or close or extended family, how you're really feeling? How do you go about it? It's that fear. It's that fear of being stigmatized, that they will treat you differently. They will treat, therefore, in turn, your family differently
Yeah.
and your extended family. So, family and community is very strong in different ethnic minority groups, and they play out in different ways. But one thing for certain that's consistent is that fear of stigma, being treated differently, being discriminated against. There might be unconscious discrimination where it's not, you don't see it, you don't see it for what it is, but it is happening in the background. So that's a huge challenge at the moment, I'd say
Yeah.
personally.
And
And I would also, sorry, George.
no, I was just gonna say it's also as well, like, the old saying, strength in numbers, and the fact
Mm,
that I guess there's less people involved in, less the different ethnic minorities, so then it'd be
mm.
harder to find someone that's had the struggles as you to relate to. So that's obviously another challenge that they face, being from
Absolutely.
minority, an ethnic minority.
Absolutely. And I do agree that the biggest challenge, also the second one, is healthcare professionals. I haven't, through my experience and being diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, body dysmorphia disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder, and going through also trying to take my own life in 2014. Through all that experience, I did not come across anyone that looked like me in my counseling or therapy sessions. I didn't really have a choice. That was another thing. There wasn't, if I did, I've got to say, George, there wasn't anyone of ethnic minority background, in all
Yeah,
honesty.
yeah,
And looking back on it, such a shame and such a big gap. But fast forward a couple of years down the line now, there's a lot more that's happening out there. I,
yeah,
I definitely do think that I'm seeing changes happen, subtle changes,
yeah.
locally and regionally happening. Um, I think one being actually, which might help this, is CCGs, clinical commissioning groups, are now going to be merged into integrated care services. I believe in April this year.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that's going to be a key change in the healthcare domain. But I want to ensure, and this is something that we need to work collaboratively with to drive it forward, definitely, to ensure that ethnic minority individuals and groups are represented higher up in the healthcare professional domain
Yeah.
to deal with mental health issues across the spectrum. So that's another challenge, but what again, there hopefully is improvements on the horizon for that.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, just over the last few years, it's just been so much more.
Mm.
I mean, I guess from what I can see as well, so much more mental health Instagram pages and things of that nature. So it's definitely on the way up for sure. Again, thank you, James, for asking the question. Um, so the first question I have for you is why is it important to have these conversations regarding mental health, but also not to feel ashamed or embarrassed about having these conversations?
Mm.
Because
Firstly,
add on before you answer, because I always feel like a lot of the times I'm scared to have a conversation with someone that's dealing with mental health because I don't know how they, I don't know if they want me to like get involved with what's going on because I don't necessarily I don't have an experience with that in my family or anything like that. So for me, I get scared that I'm going to offend. But why is it important that, for me personally, that I shouldn't think this way and should just have the conversations?
I think it's twofold there that you touched on, George. It's more so, first and foremost, how do you approach difficult conversations around mental health for a person or a loved one that you're worried about?
Yeah.
And secondly, how do you how do you then get them to open up slowly but surely, isn't it? So it's really, I guess, first and foremost, there's a lot of training out there on that. But in my opinion and from my experience, you've got to treat it lightly. You've got to be open-minded and you've got to be careful how you approach it. It's a whole package. So what I mean by that is when you are trying to open up the conversation, you in turn have got to be actively listening as well. It's a two-way relationship. You've got to talk it out, but then also listen as well and listen to the key signs and symptoms there.
Yeah.
But the rough process that I tend to go through to help anybody out there. So if you are worried about somebody struggling, and there's this fear of there's this fear of them going into further mental health issues, and you see these subtle changes happening. I will definitely, first and foremost, step one will be approach. So approaching with caution. Firstly, before you do that, noticing the signs and symptoms. So think about think about their body language. Think about their withdrawal. Were there any cases or situations where they've withdrawn from different activities?
Yeah.
Um, how's their health? Have they lost a lot of weight? Have they put on a lot of weight? How is their eating? Have they restricted that or have they consumed more
Yeah.
of that? Are they having anger outbursts? How is their emotional state? So these are the type of questions that you need to ask yourself first before you approach. Once you've sort of formulated that or jotted that down, then begin to approach, but approach carefully and like I said, approach with caution.
Get
So
a
it's all around asking that very first
Yeah.
question.
And to get more of an understanding of what's actually going on with the person. Um, I
Absolutely.
remember
Yeah.
I remember watching your documentary. You went through a very similar, if not exactly the same, situation as you described, and your parents didn't know what was going on. So one of the things I guess that they maybe failed to do is kind of like what's actually happening with her,
Mm.
with what you were saying there.
Absolutely. They didn't know. They didn't know what mental health was. They didn't know. They couldn't put a name to it. And same with me, we didn't know at all. So it was coming from the angle of they are worried about you, they're caring for you, they're your parents, listen to them. And I think that's where it started, my first conversation around my own mental health. But going back slightly, it's all about asking that right question.
Yeah.
And the key question, which we take for granted, I think, is asking that individual, how are you? But then asking them again, how are you really? How are
Yeah.
you really feeling? And it's all about body language, like I said, tone, language, environment as well, where you're speaking to them. It can't be a loud coffee shop, for example. It needs to be somewhere where you're happy to speak to them, but in turn, they are also happy to respect you by being there and being in that environment. So it's a two-way relationship. So asking that initial question or questions, then the next step would be to listen, just listen. And I've learnt a lot with my what's been on the mental health training last year. I'm a qualified mental health first aid, and one thing I remember learning is when you do give them that space to listen, to talk, and you in turn listen, you've got to understand the concept of frames of reference. So, in short, this is really, really interesting that I've learned. Frame of reference is what is real for you won't be necessarily real for that individual that you're talking to. So, what I mean by that is when a person is going through anxiety or depression, or they have had experiences of paranoia, for example, but you haven't gone through that or have not experienced that at all, you've got to get onto their wavelength.
Mm.
And by doing so, you listen to them. You don't say anything in the next sort of step. You give them that chance to just begin to open up. You may ask a few more questions, but I wouldn't probe too much.
Yeah.
But give them a chance
And,
to just listen.
and I guess when they're comfortable, they'll open up. And I guess on the flip side of that, there's you gave some, some great tips on how to deal with somebody that's dealing with mental health issues. But what about if you're struggling with mental health yourself? What can you do to help yourself?
Mm. A lot of tips out there that I've learned, that I've obtained from like-minded individuals out there, and those also that have experience of mental health. But to name a few, firstly, you've got to recognize that you have a problem, that you have an issue. So you've got to be aware of it. Once you're aware of it, you'll be able to manage it. Ways you can manage it is by firstly seeing the doctor or your GP, your local GP.
Yeah.
Secondly, what I found quite useful is doing your own desk research. That helps in a way where I guess it helps just to, with your self empowerment, you're taking ownership of your mental health. You're not driven by X, Y, and Z. This
Yeah.
is this is you. This is your doing. So desk research into looking at various different charities and organizations out there. There are so many. There are so many charities. There's so much resources out there. So I definitely recommend doing desk research. I'd also thirdly recommend looking into peer-to-peer support groups. There are so many that have come about online, just online alone in the last 18 months. And obviously slowly coming into sort of in-person peer-to-peer support groups. But I definitely say look into peer-to-peer
Yeah.
as well. I'd also say how I personally manage it is to what we do as a family is we once a month we have a trust circle.
Yeah.
So this is my mom's idea. Going through what I went through, she suggested for us to remove ourselves once a month from the home situation, to go to a nearest coffee shop, somewhere quiet, and there and then for us to go through our positives and
I
negatives
love
one by one.
that. Great.
So we've done that. We've done that for quite a few years now, George.
Wow.
And believe you me, it's really had an improvement on not only my own health and well-being, but my mum, my dad, my brother.
Yeah,
They've learning so much, and we're learning so much collectively
yeah.
about what's really going on in our mind up here, so we can best support.
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off, Sandeep. And I guess a lot of the times you may not even know that you have an issue, but just by having a conversation with the people that you trust, and yeah, you discover a lot about yourself that you may not have known otherwise. Um,
Absolutely. I find that if when you speak aloud,
yeah,
when you say anything aloud, when it's close to your heart and you haven't said it, and this is your first time saying it, relief,
mm,
relief. And now that you've stated how you're feeling, you are then able to find that help. And that is what mental health's all about. You've got to voice it, you've got to talk it out,
yeah.
speak it out when you're ready in order to seek the help you need.
Yeah, and there's a question here in the chat, but just before I ask it, I want to ask what like so you just alluded to what causes mental health problems. So you just said, oh, when you speak, that can help you deal with the issue. So so one of the ways that that your mental health issue can get worse or start to develop, where it becomes a problem essentially, is that you don't speak about it, try to bury it. Uh, my question for you is, what causes mental health problems? Yeah, in the broader sense.
Oh, there's quite a few. So it could be, for example, there's many different issues really. It's sort of a nature and nurture where some people say you're born with a mental health issue, or it's part of your genes and DNA, or the nature aspect where it's a society, societal issues that you have been brought up in and been developing in. That also has a factor. So some say it's biological, some say it's social, some say it's political. Some people say it's obviously economical as well, when you have financial issues
Yeah,
and financial burdens, mortgages to pay, um, and divorce is happening and you've got to pay for that. It's all these different issues as well, and then legal issues as well.
yeah,
Um, so it's a lot of different external factors that play out in different ways in our lives and in our journeys. Um, it's just a question of taking a step back, defining what that problem is, where is it coming from? And it's sort of the what, why, when, who, and how.
yeah,
So it's trying to figure out what the problem is, where is it coming from, why is it here in my life, and in what ways is it affecting me? When did it come about, and how? And how is a key aspect to this. How can I make it better?
yeah,
How can I get relevant support to help me out of this? But no, in essence, in short to your question, there's many external factors,
yeah.
um, from
And,
internally and externally.
yeah, and in turn as well, like if you answer the how can I get through this, you'll also reinforce the fact that you can get through, any situation and get better, learn from it. Well,
Mm,
and uh,
absolutely.
so thank you for the question again, James. So question here for you. And by the way, anybody listening there, if you have a question, please feel free to write it in the chat. So how would you go about helping someone that will sometimes admit that they are struggling with their mental health and addiction, yet other times they deny that there is a problem? So I guess this person may be scared to admit that there's an issue, and sometimes they may feel like it's definitely a problem and they need help, but I guess you just don't know where you stand all the time with this person because
Mm,
going back and forth with it. So how do you help
mm.
people like that?
Quite a few suggestions. I would firstly recommend journaling. So any emotions and thoughts that you have that come about, jot it down, write it out, put it somewhere where you can visually see it as well, because that's going to help first and foremost you keep a log and a record of all these emotions and thoughts that you're going through, when they occur, on what day they occur, and what are the patterns and frequency of this. So I definitely recommend keeping a log or a
Yeah,
journal, of these thoughts and emotions that you're going through,
yeah.
and then taking a step
I,
back. every other week to look back at.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off again. I'm really bad at that, but yeah, that's something I do. I find it's very helpful to just kind of like clear my mind and leave stress. Just
Mm.
write things down, and I find it's really helpful.
Absolutely, yeah. It might be a case of, because I know some people don't like writing down, for example. So it's thinking creatively of how you can express yourself. So it may be um, you can get sort of play cards or a whiteboard or a pen to paper, for example, or Excel spreadsheet, however you want to do it. Start to jot down your emotions and thoughts daily. And how are you really feeling? Ask yourself that question and be honest with yourself. The more honest and real you are, the more you respect yourself, and the more you'll be able to think about wider self-care for yourself and what your needs are.
Yeah.
And it's not selfish in doing so. You are looking after yourself at the end of the day.
Mm.
Um, I'd also say definitely try and seek support.
Mm.
Definitely try and seek professional support and other support out there. So having that chat with your GP, doing the relevant desk research, phoning up any relevant mental health organisations and charities in your local area. So there's many support out there. So it might be worth checking your local council or borough website first and foremost to check the local support there. They usually have signposting and useful links on there as well. And I'd also say to try, what I find quite useful is there's so many meditation and mindfulness apps out there,
Yeah.
and so many other
Is there
resources.
any that you would recommend?
Oh, there's one that crops to mind. It's Head Start, or sorry, Headspace.
Headspace.
Yeah, Headspace. That's really, really good. And there's also, I believe, the Hub. I think I might need to come back to you on that, but I think it's the Hub as well. That's useful. I believe that's more so, the latter is more so a directory for mental health support, and Headspace is more mindfulness and meditation activities and exercises
Yeah.
in short bursts that you can sort of pick and choose. Um, I would also say looking into other resources out there, and I was given this as a gift. It's a stress less box here, and it's 100 actually, 100 effective top tips for a stress-free life. Now this is purely for stress, as you can see,
Yeah.
but I'm sure, and I've seen so many out there where they've got cards like this,
Yeah.
mental health cards like this, and it's great because you can have fun, and like I was saying before, it's just a different creative way of expressing yourself and
Absolutely.
focusing on your needs. So those are a few, and I hope that's helped.
That's good. That's great. Yeah. I actually I have one of those cards, but the meditation ones, and
Yes,
they're great. They're fantastic.
they're really, really great. Yeah, you can just pick one up daily
Yeah,
and
they're
just do
um,
it.
the last question, last of my questions, and then we have a couple more questions here um, from the audience. So the last question I have for you is, why is mental health an important topic for you? So what draws you to, being an advocate for these different organizations? Why is this important to you, for you?
I love this question. I really do. I can go on and on about this question, but I'm just going to keep it really simple. Going through what I went through with lived experience of anorexia nervosa, OCD, and BDD, and surviving a suicide attempt. Post 2016, charity work has been the key foundation, the key catalyst um, around mental health. Really, it's a way I see charity work as my form of therapy,
Yeah,
and to make myself better, I try and sort of help others, but I usually do it the flip way around, where I help and I want to help and support and as many people as possible suffering in silence, and in turn you don't ask anything for it. You don't ask for any money, nothing like that. But it's just how it makes you feel. And it's just how that makes you feel that in itself is so rewarding. And that helps me much more than therapy and counseling or any counseling session can ever do. And I always struggled in terms of quantifying, you know, what I've done with my advocacy work, how much change has it actually made?
Yeah.
And I can't put a number to it, but I know from personal messages, from the comments, from emails that I get through social media and so forth, people are reaching out. People are taking that step when it's right for them. And that in itself is just priceless. So in short, to answer your question, it's just going through what I went through. I just want to be a trailblazer for mental health and help others as much as possible, in short, and having these conversations like we are now. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I mean that's great, and you're doing a great job, Sandeep, and I thank you and commend you for it as well because it's not easy speaking out on topics like this. So yeah, well done, fantastic. Um
Thank you so much, George. Thank you.
and so the last few questions I have for you, just to be mindful of your time and everyone's time here. So I want to ask you if you can recommend any books on mental health that can help people with their mental health.
Oh, oh, I'm not, in all honesty, I'm not much of a book reader.
Hmm.
I'm much more of an online browser
Yeah,
person. So apologies for that. But there are quite a few authors that I'm aware of that have written books. I'm not sure the exact titles, but there are, advocates out there.
yeah,
And I know they've written books, and I just need to find that time to look through it. But there's Johnny Benjamin as well. So Johnny Benjamin is a big advocate for mental health. He shares his story of how he tried to end his life by jumping off Westminster Bridge, and he's done this whole Finding Mike campaign to try and find that person that saved him. So Johnny Benjamin has done so much.
that's beautiful.
Ruby Wax is another one as well. She's done so much more work in the domain. She's a comedian by trade, but she's also a mental health advocate as well. Stephen Fry has done quite a lot. There are close friends that I know that have written books as well, such as Jazz Sembi. He's written a book around around his own mental health journey and own experience. My fellow Happy Heads co-director as well, Ruth Maragis, she's also recently released a book as well. But yes, in short, I'm not much of a book reader.
Yeah.
I'm much more of an online browser, looking at videos, looking at digital content more so. So that's my sort of avenue. But those are a few names, and there's many more. I can drum up a list if you need that
Yeah.
and share that with you. But those are a few that I can think of top of my
No,
head.
that's great. That's a really great question. One book in particular is actually one of my favorite books. It's called A New Earth, and it was written by Eckhart Tolle. So just to answer that question in the chat, that really helped me out when the first time I read it was years ago, and I remember reading it and just kind of it just changed my whole perspective on what life is about. I always thought it was about being and doing so many like things, having things to present to other people. But then when I read that book, I really realized that it's really about being happy and being present, being aware, and just being like a positive energy for other people so that they can be their best as well. And that book really helped me see it. So that's something I recommend that book, A New Earth.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That's really, really good.
And
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
no, I was gonna ask you another question if you want to add on to that.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Happy
Okay.
to answer the next question.
Yeah. So another question here, and we will leave at at this question because I want to be mindful of your time and everyone's time. So I'm very sorry if we don't get through all the questions here. But the last question here for you is, do you think addressing minor mental health issues is as important as addressing the larger ones from a personal view? So this is, from your personal view. And thank you for, I'm Super Carl for asking it.
Really great question.
Yeah.
First and foremost, you've got to get a better idea. You yourself as somebody that's that are worried about this particular individual. So you need to have that chat with them first to find out a little bit more. What are their problems, and then divvying them up into major and minor. Personally, my opinion, all mental health issues are major. You can't ignore them. You've got to find that help, the right help you need, and intervene early. So I would personally not divide them up like that, but push comes to shove, if you need to, and if that helps segment your thoughts and the person that you're struggling with, do so. But I definitely say dealing with the major problems first and then the minor problems. Um, and obviously seeing the doctor, seeing various counselors and healthcare professionals, doing your research as well. It's going to provide you with a better idea of what you are going through and how you can best help yourself. But in short, major, then minor.
Yeah, and just to add on to
Mm.
the question, because it's a very interesting question. I remember during in your documentary, one of the ways that you kind of I want to say avoided your problems or your mental health issues was you used to run. You used to run a lot. It was a way for you to just get away, I guess, from having to stay with your problems. So I guess that was like that was maybe the excessive running was maybe a minor problem covering up the bigger problem. How was it, and how was that? How did you deal with that? Like the running side? Uh, yeah, uh, that makes sense. I don't know if.
No, that makes perfect sense. I was in a bubble, and when you're so used to your own thoughts and your own feelings, your own emotions, you start to neglect everything around you. You start to feel everything else around you without even thinking of lesser importance. Um, so the way I sort of slowly snapped myself out of it, I guess, is with the support of my family, is with the fact that they've sat me down. They had that chat. They said, as a worried parent would, we are worried about you, Sandeep. We've noticed these signs. We've noticed that you've lost a lot of weight, that you are constantly looking at social media, that you are not eating, and all these different things that they've noticed. And I guess that was a wake up call for me, the fact that they said, we are worried, we want to book your doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
And it's when I had that opportunity with a doctor, that was the first time I opened up. And I was able to put a name to what I'm feeling or know for the first time ever about mental health,
Yeah.
what that is. So yeah, just learned so much from that.
Wow. That's yeah. It's scary, isn't it? I can only imagine.
Mm.
It's a very scary process.
And I think definitely I want to mention the fact that your major problems are heavily interlinked with your minor problems and vice versa. So going back to my point earlier, it's hard to segment them. It's hard to categorize them. But if you have to look at a problem, look at the major one, and you're going to find once you break it down, and what I went through with counseling and therapy, once you break it down, you find the core reasoning and the core issue behind all these different problems. They're all interlinked and interrelated. But yes, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
yes, and it was absolutely great chat. I just want to say thank you for doing what you're doing, and just want to commend you and congratulate you on all that you've done with since having your experience, and that it's obviously been very beneficial for a lot of different people because you went through it. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time as well.
Thank you so much, George. A real pleasure. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year, everybody, if that's still able to say that. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Goodbye, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.